Hey guys, I wanted to shoot a quick video talking about some of my thoughts on what's going on recently with the coronavirus thing. When I was watching the news today, I saw Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York State, talking about how Trump he wants the president to send a lot of medical equipment and things to New York State to help with the coronavirus relief effort. And to me, it really bothered me. It really showed a lot of gall, and in no way that was good. I mean, New York State, it's run by a snake pit of Democrats, and what what they're doing with the economy is unacceptable. You want to take all of this money and give it to things like abortion mills, and you want to give money to just all of these frivolous things. And some of the things they give money to aren't necessarily bad. Not everything they're giving money to is an abortion mill. Some things are good causes. It's like, okay, you want to have X, Y, and Z as a private charity. It may very well be a good cause, but is it something that you're going to take the money from people at the point of a gun to fund? Is that something that's appropriate? Um, for my view is that tax dollars should pretty much be funding law enforcement, the military, and I actually think that tax dollars should be funding scientific research that has to do with infectious diseases. Um, and I've talked about that in previous articles and videos. But just because something is a good cause doesn't mean it's something that should be funded by the government. Um, for example, a lot of churches out there have youth programs that are very much good cause, but is that something that we want the government supporting or the government funding? Probably not. Um, there's, if you have a bunch of elderly women, having a quilting club, great. That's a good cause, and you might choose to privately give charity to that. But is that something the government should be funding? No, probably not. And the reason is, even if something's a good cause, all tax dollars are taken by force, and there is no voluntary tax right now. That's something Cody Leibolt suggested in something he in an article or video that he produced, and I thought that was very interesting. The idea of what if all taxes were voluntary and it was basically funded, police, the courts, the jails, and that was about it. Um, and I thought that was definitely an interesting thing. Um, I think with what's going on with this coronavirus, we're gonna have to really rethink a lot of things. We're gonna have to rethink how the medical industry is run. We're gonna have to think about how much of the red tape and paperwork that goes on in medical care, how much of that is actually helping patients and actually helping people get better, and helping the medical industry be accountable and helping them to function, and how much of it is just creating red tape that drives up the costs of medical care and actually hurts the ability of doctors and nurses to treat patients. Um, in my own field, in biotech, I've heard talk that um, this coronavirus thing might give it a shot in the arm. And I don't remember what all the details were on that. It's kind of funny how I get on camera and like I don't know if anybody else gets this who's a YouTuber, but sometimes I get on camera and all the things I was gonna say that sounded really smart up here, they just go. But that's partly why I am practicing being on camera more often. Um, so hopefully this will give the biotech industry a shot in the arm. Sadly, I found out that the agency that I'm working through informed me yesterday that the company I was working at has laid off all of the temporary employees, and that includes me. Um, so, I mean, it is what it is. It's a good company to work for, amazing boss, amazing team lead. If they get things back, back on track, in the next few days, if things go back to normal quickly and they want me back, I definitely go back, unless, I took a different offer. Um, but I am really hoping that this will be a turning point in biotech, in research, and I hope that a lot of that is research that's being done through private industry and through private donations. Um, don't get me wrong, I do think the government has a role uh, for funding scientific research in certain areas, um, but ideally, don't want um, I don't want science. Part of my stretched analogy slash metaphor. I don't want the head of science to be constant. I don't want the neck of science to be between the blocks of a guillotine at all times, just waiting for the next 4 years of the next politician to say, hey, we're not going to fund this anymore, and then it's over. And I don't think most researchers want that either. Unfortunately, most scientists out there really focus on government funding when it comes to research. At least that's been my experience. Maybe the polls would show something different. Um, but it just seems like there's this attitude of, oh, well, I have this research that needs to be done, and it's going to really help mankind. Let me get the government to fund it. Why not instead seek out the Rockefellers of the world, seek out the Jeff Bezos, seek out the rich entrepreneurs and say, hey, is this something you'd be willing to invest in? Here's a product that could result in me studying the slime of this type of snail. It might create a new adhesive or a new lubricant that could really revolutionize industry and really help to prevent machines from breaking down. Um, or, hey, here I'm studying this particular type of duck and studying its bone structure. And, well, with studying its bone structure, we might find better ways to build or even grow building materials, find better ways to grow skyscrapers. My understanding from history, I seem to vaguely remember that the Eiffel Tower was based on bone structure. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of room for scientific research if the focus is right, if we're smart about it, if we're economic about it, and if we really think about what we're doing, and sit down, run the numbers, and say, be like Rockefeller and say, okay, what is being done here? What could be done differently? One of the big things that Rockefeller did was he figured out when people were taking crude oil and doing the separation process and getting kerosene, there was this byproduct that was being just discarded. It was thought of as a useless waste product. The byproduct was called gasoline. Rockefeller figured out, hey, this could be used in these new engines that are being developed. This would be perfect. Rather than this being a waste product, this became a new product that people could actually use and people could use to be productive. And then, of course, years later, when Henry Ford made the automobile widespread and available to the common person, the invention of gasoline and the invention and the mass production of the automobile really coalesced well together. And I really think there's a lot of room for that. And I think there's especially room for that in the biotech industry. We just got to be smart about it. We've got to think different. We've got to look for the thing that nobody else is looking for. We've got to be like the Rockefellers and the Henry Fords of the 21st century. So, anyway, that's, and then we don't have to worry so much about, hey, is the government going to be willing to fund my snail research? Or is the government going to be willing to fund my Drosophila research? Or whatever the case may be. We won't have to worry about it because the free market will fund our research, and we'll be producing products that will revolutionize humanity. Um, and so I think that's kind of the thing is going forward. A lot of us in the industry will have to decide: do we want science to be a very expensive hobby that's paid for by the government, or is science going to be something that really benefits mankind? And if it's going to be the latter, if it's going to be something that does benefit mankind, then a lot of the research should be able to become self-sustaining. We might have to be a little creative about it, but I don't know about you, but I don't want I don't want the government's hand in my wallet. Anyway, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Let me know what you think of the coronavirus thing, and let's talk about ways that we can do things differently. And honestly, I want honest comments and educated comments. People who think that we should just take all the money from the rich and give it to the poor really don't know anything about economics, and also that's not what happened in the Robin Hood story. So, anyway, thanks for taking time to watch this video. This is Greg out. Live long and prosper.